Hey, what's going on? It's Doug here. Today we have an interview. This is a little bit different than normal. I got a cold email from some guy named Boris. I didn't know who it was. Totally cold email. But Boris is the founder of a software company that does scheduling. So it's scheduling software. And I use scheduling software because I'm a sole proprietor. I work for myself and I have to set up meetings. Now, what I don't want to do is have like several emails going back and forth to arrange such like a meeting, right? Just a random meeting. So his software is actually relevant to me. And for whatever reason, his approach and email, I don't know. I was okay with it. I got the email the right time of day. Maybe it was happy hour or something like that. And I was like, sure, man, I'll take a look at your software. And by the way, I have a YouTube channel. Why don't we chat? So I don't know Boris at all. And he said, sure, why don't we do this interview? So we literally, it's kind of like a first date. I asked him some questions. He asked me a few questions. And then we just had a nice conversation. So that's what this is. Now, we don't go too much into depth about Cogsworth, which is his scheduling software. I didn't even mention it before. It's called Cogsworth. But I have done a demo of Cogsworth. So if you're interested, if you have to set up meetings and you don't want to have back and forth, you should check out that piece of software. I think there's like a 14-day free trial or something like that. And it works great. I've enjoyed it. I've used multiple scheduling software in the past, and Cogsworth is actually the most intuitive that I've used. So let's head over to the interview. Welcome. This is Doug Cunnington here, and I'm sitting with Boris. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Really glad to be here.
And Boris is, I believe, the founder of Cogsworth. Is that correct?
Yeah, solo founder. But I'm not alone in the business, fortunately. Got some really cool people helping me.
Right on. So we don't know each other at all. We just hopped on to Zoom here to chat for a little while. You sent me a cold email and the tool looked fine and your email pitch was fine, right? It sounds like you have a background in some marketing and like you know how to work with people. And I was like, oh, this guy seems all right. And I was like, hey, you want to be on the show? So that's why we're sitting here right now. For people that don't know you at all, like me, can you introduce yourself?
I'm really glad that the email came through because it was one of these things, before I introduce myself, that I didn't want to send out a bunch of mass email, which is the instinct of every marketer to be like, I don't want to be sending cold emails one-on-one. But I thought, what, I'm going to selectively go through 20 people and that I like, and I'm going to test and see if I create somewhat of a personal pitch, whether that gets any resonance. If it doesn't, I'm going to spam the shit out of people. But I'm really glad it worked because it actually worked with a couple of people as well, which actually is an interesting lesson we should go into later. But just a little bit about myself. My name is Boris. I have been working in digital and in web stuff for the last 14 years, since 2005, when I finished high school and I went into uni, but I started kind of web development in that break. I don't know whether in America you guys have a break between when you finish high school and you go to university, but in Australia we had this like 3-month break, and I really got into advertising and web design for this guy who wanted me to help him with his business, and then just kicked off my journey. And when I was at university at Sydney Uni in Australia, I did a medical science degree. I was going to go into medicine. And what's funny is that I was doing it and I wasn't really enjoying it. I finished the degree, but I didn't go into medicine. Since finishing uni, all I've done is digital. So I've worked with some really awesome companies. In Australia, when Vistaprint launched, I was one of the first people to be hired, and I was really fortunate to see such an awesome organization, how they execute their analytics, their digital. I've learned so many valuable lessons from Vistaprint and that was the first company that I properly worked at. And to this day, I still refer to my Vistaprint days. It just, although they're called something else now, a phenomenal company. I'd love to go into them if you're curious later. Then I worked for like a group buying company similar to Groupon in Australia. It was like a local competitor called Kudo. I ran marketing there. I also did a bunch of startups. I built an insurance company, like an insurance online company, which we exited out of. Nothing amazing, obviously, because I'm not retired. Not that I would ever retire. it was just funny. I was having this conversation yesterday with my music teacher. I'm just going down my own pathway here, so feel free to stop me. But I just Skype music lessons. I don't know whether you can see the piano in the background, but my music teacher is an awesome guy. He also has a startup. And we were talking about how it's really tough having a startup because you're kind of having to balance all these trade-offs that you have in your life. Like you can't, you're putting off buying a house and, you keep depriving yourself of things. But we wouldn't have it any other way because the bigger deprivation would be to be working in a job from 9 to 5 and just having no hope. Whereas now, at least we're doing stuff that we think is valuable, which is interesting, and which we're passionate about. We have to work freaking hard, and the financial rewards aren't there yet, hopefully, but there will be at one point. It's still a very worthwhile journey. Yeah, so then I built that insurance company. And then I started consulting really heavily. Like I went into my consultancy and I had like a dozen clients and I was like on my own. I was working like 100-hour weeks from the attic of my house. I was earning good money, but like that was totally unsustainable. I was working like weekends, just coming down for dinner sort of thing. Not seeing my girlfriend, not seeing my dog. And I had to make a change. And I knew that I wanted to build something personally. I always wanted to do something where my time would have an exponential payoff. Because with consulting, it's like you can only earn as much as the time that you invest. So even if you charge $200 an hour, yes, that's great. But you can only work so much, and there's no exponential growth of that on that. So that immediately I was attracted to like a business of sorts. I tried to start an e-commerce company because I'm really comfortable in e-commerce. I consult a lot of companies on e-commerce, and I tried to do a subscription t-shirt, underwear, and sock company called Bockers, which I love the brand. Like it was a big journey for me. I can go into that, but I couldn't pull it off because I didn't have enough cash. And I was too green at the time. But then I did a couple of other things. I built a SaaS company, built like a CRM company. I ran a pretty large digital publishing company in Australia. We actually had the rights to a company called The Knot, which you guys have in the States. It was Australia's largest wedding website. So that was cool. And I came to Cogsworth about 2 years ago. The idea came to me rather, and it came out of this insight that I had around availability of businesses. I'm just going to talk until you stop me. So.
I like it because I just said to introduce yourself, but then it's just, you're off to the races. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's hard to do that, by the way. I guess since you are talking about Cogsworth, what is it for people who don't know yet?
Yeah, so Cogsworth is an appointment scheduling tool. And people are like, there's a ton of appointment scheduling tools out there. I love it. I love it when I'm just talking to this guy who I barely know, not you, but like this guy or girl. And I've had this all the time. And they're like, what's your unique value proposition? How are you different to Calendly? She's like, they just don't know anything, but they just like immediately go to, how are you different? And it is a fair question. And I guess I only get a little bit defensive about it because of my ego. It is a fair question. But we are very different to Calendly, and I've spent quite a bit of time creating like comparison tables with a bunch of competitors, which you can find on our blog. The main difference that we have to all the other providers, and the reason that I think people need to sign up to Cogsworth if they're interested in an appointment scheduling system, we just do it in an intuitive way. It's logical how everything is laid out. We don't have like walk through software. People can just figure it out. It's really easy to book. Like from a customer perspective, so customers that book with your business, we only ask one question at a time. And that is a very intentional step because, a lot of conversion tests that I've done, and it's generally quite accepted that if you ask people one question at a time, you'll get better conversion rate than if you present them with a multitude of questions that they have to answer at one point. I wholeheartedly believe, and of course I'd say that I'm biased, but I wholeheartedly believe that we're the best scheduling system out there. I get a bunch of compliments, so much so that I've had to start a spreadsheet on all the different compliments I could share with like the developers about how nice Cogsworth is, how beautiful the interface is. That warms my heart because we've put in so much freaking time and effort into the thing. And we're not a big team, right? So we've got 2 developers, myself and a designer, and I take up the Slack like with customer service, with, drive the product innovation. And I'm trying to shift my focus now into a more growth mindset. But it's just really rewarding to see that people are appreciating it. And I really, 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 truly hope that the product gets what it deserves, because objectively, I think it's a good product. I've signed up to 24 of our competitors, and I think they're shit. I will say though, in all fairness, Calendly is probably the only exception. It is a good product. It is simple enough. I think we're still better, but I think it's the only one that gives us a run for our money.
I'll mention one thing with Cogsworth and Calendly. I was using Calendly for about 2 years, and I switched over, and I could tell you from my perspective as someone on the back end or whatever, I guess it's the user for you, and then my customers book through it. It is simpler to actually set up my side of the house. So the services as they're noted, and changing the stuff. In Calendly, there were a lot more mouse clicks, and it was kind of hidden on how to do certain things. So it honestly, Boris, when you first started talking about it, I was like, sure, you think your baby's the cutest, right? But you're actually right. The interface is easier on Cogsworth. So well
that's
done.
Lovely. That's so lovely to hear.
A quick story about myself. Like I didn't watch any videos, right? It's intuitive. So I went in there, I was like, I could figure it out. It's scheduling software, pretty simple, right? So I set up the questions that I wanted to ask the user. And by default, I think it's like name, email, something, and then phone number maybe. I don't remember. Something like that by default, which is fine. I accidentally, because I didn't read the directions, right? I changed the phone number question to, hey, enter your Skype thing, right? But it's expecting a number, but I'm asking for alphanumeric, right? So people were like, hey, I can't enter it in, and they would shoot me an email. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. So when I went in and realized it's always user error, right? I mean, you understand the customer support stuff. So yeah, I screwed up, but I went in and fixed it. It was super easy.
You know what? But that's good feedback. We can improve that. Thank you for giving me that feedback. We definitely need to do some stuff there.
Sure. And you know what? I know it was at the end of my day. I'm pretty sure I was having a beer, and I probably wasn't paying attention. So yeah, I mean, you could go through the flow again and see, but.
What beer were you having?
I think I was having a Bozone. I'm in Bozeman, Montana here in the US. So there's a brewery, Bozone, and I was having their IPA. So
is that a pale ale or is that a dark ale?
It is a pale ale. So it's called the Hop Zone India Pale Ale. So pretty hoppy, and yeah, I enjoy the beer. What's your drink of choice? All I know is Foster's down there,
I am not a huge drinker, but I do enjoy the occasional cold beverage. And we recently went to Tasmania in Australia, and there's a lot of microbreweries in Australia and in Tasmania as well. And they had this really nice dark ale, which actually tasted exactly like a pale ale. I forget what it's called, but I don't know whether you've ever experienced that. It's pretty trippy.
Interesting. I'm a home brewer. I make beer. I have a kegerator out in the garage there.
No way. That's so cool.
So yeah, there's a few styles that they look like a stout. They look, black, but they taste pretty light. They may have a little roastiness. Did that beer you have, was it any roast or caramel or anything?
Yeah, it was a little bit roasty, but I've got such an unsophisticated palate. When people are like, yeah, what wine would you like? I'm like, the sweet one.
Like a port. Yeah.
I'll have a port or like a fruit wine. I enjoyed it. Like, tell me, what do you look for when you taste beer? Like, educate me on what I should go for.
I'm a beer judge too. So like I can really like make it not fun. But I mean, if you're just having a beer and it sounds like you're a casual, like not too often drinker, whatever you like is cool. But it is interesting to sort of pick out the core like flavors. So on like a pale ale, for example, you would maybe look for like the hop flavor, right? So it's a little bitter. There may be some floral components or citrus. There's some tropical fruit that may come through in the aroma, and then bitterness at the end. Whereas you're drinking like a darker, maybe like a brown ale. Do you get Newcastle down there or something like that?
Yeah, I think we do actually. Yeah.
Okay. So Newcastle is like a British like brown ale. So that'll have like some nutty and caramel components and stuff like that.
How do you know what you're smelling / tasting, because to my mind it's always been a lot like a Rorschach, paint drawing. Like you kind of, whatever comes to mind is what goes.
Yeah, so that is super interesting question. It's all about, and I'll draw an analogy to pull us back into the business world a little bit too, but it's all about the vocabulary that you use. And you don't know how to describe a flavor or an aroma until someone tells you that is strawberries, or that smells like apples or whatever, or bananas or something like that. So like, you could smell the aroma, but until someone puts the label on it, you actually don't know. Mm-hmm. So to draw us back into the business world a little bit, although I could talk about beer all day, but from the business world, you may hit, actually, we'll just say like a dip, right? So you're going along, things are fine. Maybe you're having a little growth, and then like growth stops, like new customers are not coming in. If you're thinking about like affiliate sites and affiliate marketing, your traffic drops. So you're in a dip and you don't know what to do. Are you at a spot where you need to quit, or there's a book by Seth Godin, The Dip, if people aren't aware that I'm just taking someone else's idea, but you don't know if you should quit or if you just have to push through and try harder and fix what's broken, Mm-hmm. So the vocabulary is the dip. So that is a term that people may use. So to tie it back with Cogsworth, I'm sure there have been periods, and your other business ventures, like some worked out, the physical product company. So why do you keep going back to this process?
Such a good question. I think it's because I'm a punishment junkie. No. Part of it is that I actually do think that part of it, like when you work out, you look like you work out. Oh, nice. Yeah. When you work out, you feel pain, and you totally out of your discomfort zone. Out of your comfort zone, I should say. I like to go for runs as well, and like it burns, your heart throbs, it's hard to breathe, but you do it. And you do it because, there's like all these endorphins circulating in your mind, your brain, making you feel good. But more importantly, it feels like you're earning your keep. And then there's also those physical manifestations that come after, working out. Not that you can see them on me, but, so long as I'm not obese, I'm happy. So to your question, there are a couple of reasons I do it. I do this. The first reason is kind of a selfish one. So like a mental justification. I've had quite a lot of failures, and initially I would take it so freaking hard, and I'd think, Jesus, I suck. This is the worst. Like getting kicked in the nuts over and over again. Mm-hmm. Then I've kind of learned to be a little bit more meditative about it and justify it in thinking, well, I've learned a bunch of lessons. It's the equivalent of an MBA. And a lot of the time, in a couple of the businesses that have failed in the past, I've sunk quite a bit of my own money into it. But if you compare it to the cost of an MBA, it's still a lot cheaper. The lessons that I learn, I make sure not to repeat those mistakes in future businesses. And I think that the other thing that I keep getting drawn to is this idea that I can do it, because I've done it for a number of other businesses that I consult to. I know that I can do it. The proof has been done. I've done it even for myself in a couple of instances, but I just have to persevere. And, I keep getting drawn to the movie, The Founder. I don't know whether you've seen it. Have you seen it?
No. Is that the one with, about McDonald's?
Yeah, about McDonald's.
I haven't watched it, but I heard of it. Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's a nice. The guy's a bit of a dickhead, but the funny thing is, like, my girlfriend and I went in to see the movie, and I came out thinking, "Whoa, this guy's amazing." And my girlfriend's like, "Nah, this guy's a prick." And then I rewatched it, and he actually is a prick. But in the movie, this doesn't spoil anything. He listens to these like self-help books. And in the self-help books, the voice says, success isn't about how good looking you are, how clever you are, any of those things that are endowed to you. It's perseverance. And I do believe that's the case because, again, one of my other like recently favorite texts is The Martian. I don't know whether you've by Andy Weir. Have you?
Yeah. And I'm reading his other book, Artemis, right now.
Yeah,
actually.
Oh, Artemis is great as well. He's
All
such a
right.
good writer. I don't know whether you know about his story, by the way. I think he's lived in the Silicon Valley. I think he was a programmer. And he was just writing these texts in his blog. Did you know that?
Yeah, and a little bit. Keep going though, for the people that don't know.
So, but he's a beautiful writer. He's just got this really engaging style, and I think some authors just nail that. Like J.K. Rowling, she has this style which just draws people into their world, and I think that's so wonderful. But I loved in The Martian that he says something like, you just have to solve one problem at a time, and you keep solving them until you get home. And it just, like, even now I've just got like tingles down my spine thinking about that. And recently I read Shoe Dog. I don't know whether you've seen that book.
I haven't read it, but I know of that one too. Yeah.
Great, by Phil Knight, who's the founder of Nike. And I don't agree with a lot of the messages because his book was a bit boy clubby-ish, and I don't think that will fly in the current context. But the overall story was still quite nice, and it wasn't glorified because they struggled a lot. Like 10 years in, they were still trying to find finance for Nike, and he was still having these growth problems. And in a way, it's like that Schadenfreude effect. When others are suffering, you kind of get a bit of, you kind of feel a bit of a reprieve for your own suffering. I don't even know where I was going with it, but it's not an easy journey, but he just ends up solving many, many problems in order to get the business flowing. And with software, in my opinion, you just solve an order of magnitude of problems more than you would in a traditional business, because things happen so quickly. You implement a change, either it's buggy or people love it. And if they love it, they'll give you feedback. If they hate it, they'll give you feedback. If it doesn't work, you'll have your own feedback. So you got to change. You got to solve problems.
So you mentioned you had the physical product company. You said like socks, underwear, and something.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like what was the deal?
Bockers. I love the name Bockers, because it came out of this idea of like knickerbockers. And I was just like on the toilet one day. All my best ideas come to me on the toilet. I was thinking, what is a good name? And Bockers, I was like, Bockers. And I was Googling and I was like, it's available, take it. The idea was the subscription models were all rage. And Dollar Shave Club recently launched at the time. And I was like, wow, these guys are so clever. It's a really cheap product to store, really cheap product to send, lots of margin. Once you acquire a customer, you get that lifetime value, recurring business. You can build a nice forward pipeline. I love that about SaaS, and I love that about recurring business models, that you don't just have to keep requiring the customer. You just invest in the product. And provided you do a good enough job of staving off your competition, you can keep that customer for a lifetime. I was like, this is brilliant. I'm going to go try and do something like that. I was assessing all the problems, and I was looking at my own kind of wardrobe and thinking, I freaking hate underwear shopping. I just want a cotton pair of boxer shorts and shirt because it's really hot in Australia as well. I just wanted to breathe. Really simple. So it was just like a white shirt with navy boxes, and it was a great idea. I have, by the way, a lifetime supply of boxer shorts. You should tell me your size so I can send you a couple.
I want new ones, man. I don't want to.
No, new ones. Seriously, I actually have a ton, and just like after this, not joking. Tell me, I'll send you out like a little care pack. So I went to China, and not knowing anything. Like first, I was on Alibaba. And this was Alibaba when it wasn't very good. It still isn't very good, but this was...
Yeah, what year was this?
This was 2000 and I want to say 12 or 11. And it still wasn't very... Like Alibaba was like a rough interface. And, speaking to Chinese factory owners or the people that work for the Chinese factory owners is hard. Even now it's hard because there's that language barrier. You can't, unless you speak Mandarin or you've done business in China before, which I hadn't, it's really tough. And so for about 4 months, I was concurrently building the site. I'd never really built like a recurring platform before. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was building that concurrently whilst trying to source samples and figure out the product. Anyway, this is a great story. So I finally end up with all the things that I want. I go to Guangzhou, the most depressing freaking city I've ever been to. The sun does not shine. It was like gray and polluted. And I saw like amputees on the street. It felt like I was in a dystopian world. And yeah, Like I get to the hotel, I call up the factory owner, they come pick me up, they show me around the factory. It was great that like they don't negotiate on price with me. Like I tried to, but they're like, no, because they can see I'm this white kid that's come to China on their turf. They have all the power. That was a mistake. I mean, I should have, in hindsight, been more aggressive on the negotiation there. But the beautiful part of it is like we finally, I'm like, yep, let's place the order. And we're like literally sitting at the table signing the contract. And she's like, oh, where in Australia are you from? I'm like, oh, I live in a suburb. At the time I lived in a suburb called Camperdown, which is in the inner west of Sydney, which is like close to the city. She goes, our owner lives in Marrickville, which is like a 20-minute drive from where I lived. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I came to Guangzhou. You couldn't have, like, in the months of conversation, you couldn't have just said, oh, just like talk to our owner. He lives around the corner from you. I had to come to Guangzhou and all this way. I probably could have avoided the whole trip. In the end, we ended up getting the goods, and like I think I spent like $10K, which was a lot of money for me then. I didn't have a lot of savings. It's still a lot of money now, but I didn't have a lot of savings. And then, spending the website money, then the cost of acquisition was just too high. I think it was like $60 or $80. And I couldn't
to get a customer right through ads or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. And I really only had one tool I had like two tools in my toolkit, which was AdWords and SEO. And SEO takes a ton of time to get going, and AdWords, you got to have a lot of money to figure out what works, what doesn't. I mean, with clients, it's easy because they have a lot of money usually, and you can be like, okay, we're going to go hard for 2 months, learn a bunch of things, and then iterate from there. But with your own money, you're like, shit, my bank account is going down. And my idea was like, I'd get customers and then I'd, upsell them with email marketing and things like that. Great idea. In principle, works really well if executed correctly, but you need cash. And I was like, I can't do this. So I had to stop it. I think maybe I even stopped it prematurely. I think if I persevered more, I probably could have broken through. But again, I was really young. This was like 8 years ago. I was young. I wasn't seasoned. My skin was thin. I couldn't take even the slightest bit of rejection. My ego was so fragile. Now I meditate quite a bit. So I go for a run. I know how to manage like a fairly high level of stress. And I've come to expect stress. And I've come to learn how to deal with it. And that's the biggest difference, I think, between me now and me 8 years ago. It's just how weather-worn I am and how ready for punishment I am.
Right. Yeah. And I think with that experience, like back in the day, it maybe felt, I know for me, like if you make a mistake, that is like the end, right? Like the mistake is unrecoverable. Now, of course, at some point you run out of runway. If you don't have enough capital, like that is a true problem, right? Like that is something that is not, you need more money to do it. At some point it's like, well, if you make a mistake with some ads or something, then that's okay. Like you have information, you got the feedback, and now you can move forward. But yeah, now I'm like, oh, there's so many things that can go wrong and it will probably be okay.
Totally. And you learn that and you have to learn that by doing, and there's no way that someone can tell you just hang in there, because you just have to hang in there if you're in it.
Right. And the other, I don't know if this showed up with you in the past. I think I thought this a little bit, but a lot of the people that I work with, they're pretty accomplished. They're type A. They've been successful in many different areas. And we all think we're pretty damn good, right? We think we're more special than other people. And even though it takes everyone else, I'm just going to make up something. It takes everyone else like a year to like learn how to do X. Well, you know what? I could probably learn it in 4 months because I'm just that smart. Well, it turns out a lot of people are pretty fucking smart out there. And if it takes everyone a year to figure something out, it's probably going to take you a year. It's really rare that someone like skips the curve. So did you have that like affliction where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm better than other people?
I think I still have that affliction in a way. But it's funny. There's a line that I've noticed between just confidence and also arrogance. And I think as a startup owner, just like you have to live in this realm between the real possibility of failure and the hope of success, you have to live in a world of backing yourself and doubting yourself. And you just can't be delusional, and you have to rely, and you got to be really lucky in life as well, because you got to rely on people being able to be honest with you and give you frank feedback and just like bring you down to size. And I've had that a lot, and I've been very, very lucky to have that. Yeah, I mean, I objectively think that I'm very good at some online tools, and I just know how to, I don't know whether you read the Malcolm Gladwell book, about the 10,000 hours. Mm-hmm. I feel like I've had more than 10,000 hours of online marketing. So I just feel comfortable. I feel like a fish in water. If you just throw a tool at me, I'll figure it out. I know how analytics works inside out. I know how, channels work inside out now. So that's what I have the confidence in a way to be like, I can figure this out. I just really I need time, and I need a bit of a runway, which is not easy. The other thing you were talking about, doubting yourself, and we were talking about, the process of why do you go back. I just wanted to, I don't know whether you can see, but I got a piano in the background, and I alluded to the fact that I have a teacher online, and it's the Skype, and I feel like that de-risks part of my personality. I never want to be too deeply tied in with just one thing. I want to have other interests. There's nothing worse than someone that can just talk about one thing and nothing else. And I'm shit at the piano. I've been at it for like 4 years now, via Skype, and I'm still a rank amateur, but I enjoy the challenge of it. I enjoy the flow of it, and I enjoy challenging myself to learn. And I love music as well. I think it's a wonderful thing. It's definitely one of these things that I pursue for the pursuit of it, not for an end goal of it. And I think that's also how I'm trying to view the startup, trying to view Cogsworth. But yeah, that's me. Like, how do you approach what you do? And I'd love to actually learn a little bit more about your story.
I'll just say currently right now, I do mostly affiliate marketing. So I have Amazon affiliate sites, primarily traffic through SEO, since you have a background in that area. I have a couple courses as well. So, like a classic internet marketer, I created a course on how to create a site to earn money. So it's a weird industry, internet marketing and making money online, but I try and stay on the up and up on that side of everything. I started in management consulting. I worked at Accenture for a couple of years, worked at another software company doing telecom project management consulting there. So I have my PMP and I had about 10 years of a corporate job with the normal, it was like Office Space, basically. So you know Office Space, right?
Yeah.
Do you not know? Or
no, I've seen that ages ago. Okay. Is that with the guy from Scrubs, John Riley?
No, different guy. So it has Ron Livingston. Oh, this is going to change your life. I don't know if you have plans on this weekend or whatever, Office Space. Yeah, it's in 1999. It has Ron Livingston and a lot of other famous people. But you put some time in a corporate job, right?
Yeah, totally.
And cubes and all that. So yeah, classic movie. And Jennifer Aniston's in it. She's probably she's a smaller part, but anyway. So I had the corporate background. I guess it was 5 years ago. I discovered online marketing just in general and started just dabbling on the side. And I got laid off almost 4 years ago. And at that point, I was like, well, now's a good time for me to give it a shot. And it was really tough for the first year, probably with all new businesses. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't quite know what to expect. But once I pushed past that, it's been great. Really enjoy working for myself and working, at home or wherever I want to go. So we were able to travel a little bit and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's my story.
What niches do you play in?
So typically in my industry, we try not to mention it because the interesting thing is it's a low barrier to entry, low cost to entry. So it's really easy to get copycats and negative SEO and all that stuff, where at least, the good part with the physical product business is you have to at least have the capital, and a lot of people can't even compete. And in fact, right, there's plenty of examples where if you have enough money at the beginning, you could just push your competitors out.
Right.
So I basically, it's consumer products. So anything you can get on Amazon is kind of like that area.
Right. And how do you go about making sure that you have enough margin in, like, so that it's worth your while, essentially?
That's a really good question. A lot of times people will ask me about like, oh, what's the ROI on like this, let's say 100 pieces of content that are, 2,000 words each, and you're targeting a specific product. These are like product review sites typically. The answer is it's really hard to tell, because if you're looking at a short amount of time, 3, 6, 12 months, the ROI may be, pretty low, and the margins may be like low-ish, right? And I'll just make something up and say these are 15%. I'm just completely making it up. However, if you look like a long enough timeline, it could be huge. It could be like, 400% or something. So the reason is you publish something, it gets some traffic over the next 6 months. That's great. But over the next 6 years, it could bring in, 400 times more traffic, right? So at that point, it's like a piece of rental property or something that you've paid off now, and now it's just 100% margin coming in. So in the good part, it's not 100% passive, but the maintenance is quite low after you've invested. So the way I like to approach it is to invest slowly. So maybe invest a few $100s a month, and then as that is proving itself to bring in some money, you're more confident, right, to invest more each month after that. And at that point, at some point you could stop. And then again, you have that asset, you could sell it. I've sold a couple sites. There are a lot of brokers out there. So you could, get 2 to 3 years of earnings in like all at once. Of course, you got to pay taxes like crazy on that kind of stuff. But, you could eliminate the risk, right? There's risk in holding an asset where you're dependent on SEO traffic. It's an affiliate program. You don't own the products and that kind of thing.
Have you thought about, just your philosophy, have you thought about progressing from an affiliate to just owning the product and selling it yourself? Because it strikes me as a really good way of testing the like MVP, so to speak. So you first become an affiliate, you build the funnel, blah, blah, blah. And then have you thought about, okay, I'm going to sell baby diapers, because I have a great flow for it now.
Yep. Yes, but only a tiny bit. So I decided to stick in one area and then just like be an expert on that. So there are some people who they have the full vertical thing. So they figured out how to get the traffic. They own the traffic. They see the products are selling well, right? I can go to my dashboard and see I'm selling like a high number of several products, and then I could try and source those.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided because, every time you switch to a new area, you have to learn like everything again. So I decided to learn slightly different things. Like I said, I developed courses. So I can refine my the things that I'm a practitioner in, like the affiliate marketing, by teaching other people and like learn more and more about the copywriting and selling courses versus learning how to have a physical product. But there are people that definitely do that, and there's a lot of different areas where you could do drop shipping, Amazon, or fulfilled by Amazon, the FBA, or, like buy the product and like fulfill it yourself too. So
from my experience, having tried to do that, it's just such a cash burden, especially for a solo entrepreneur. Here comes another plane. You have to excuse that. Especially for a solo entrepreneur or somebody that just doesn't have hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. Because the other thing about business that I've learned from consulting as well is that you got to have enough buffer of a cash to be able to make mistakes and then recover from that. Because you can't be like, oh, one mistake could sink me. You got to be able to take a few gut shots and be able to survive from that. So I can totally see your rationale for not wanting to go down that road. Plus, I think it's also interesting and valuable to be able to pass on your knowledge to other potential people, potential like aspiring entrepreneurs, which I think is a noble pursuit as well.
Thank you. Well, we are coming up towards the end of time. I want to respect your day there, but any like parting words, and of course we'll hook everybody up with links over to Cogsworth and other information. And I did a review, so we'll link up to that as well.
Well, no pressure. I'll have a brief mention about just my general thoughts on entrepreneurship, and then I'll quickly close with Cogsworth. So, in my experience, I think that it's important to have thick skin, and you can't just be born with thick skin. You have to develop it. And I think for people that are looking to be in our industry, when I say our industry, I mean the broad online industry, which is a pretty big industry. I think people just have to expect to weather the storm. And from a Cogsworth perspective, I'd love people to check it out and give us feedback. We're really open to feedback. All we care about is improving the product and making it even better than it is. Our vision for Cogsworth is very different to the vision of any other scheduling tool. We're not out to become a broad tool, like for a lot of these tools venture into, integrations with marketing channels and integrations with website, with, different vertical elements of business. We're out to be the best scheduling tool, right? And an interoperable scheduling tool, which you can integrate with your other channels, but all we're ever going to do is scheduling. And we're going to go really, really, really deep into scheduling and solve as many of the scheduling problems as we can, given our time and capital constraints, but that's all we care about. So if you think that there are tools out there that you use or you've heard of that are wanting, then check out Cogsworth, because we are pretty kick-ass.
I like them. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Boris. Appreciate you taking time out today. And it sounds like we'll talk soon.
Definitely. Thanks, Doug. I appreciate your time. And speak soon.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Boris. Really appreciate you taking the time. And if anyone has questions for Boris or myself, please leave a comment and we'll do our best to get back to you.